On a quiet Sunday evening in August 1971, over 70 million Americans turned on their televisions expecting a routine address. What they got instead was the end of the world they knew. Not a war, not a disaster, just one man at a desk, reading a statement that would quietly rewrite the rules of money for every person on Earth, forever. Richard Nixon called it a temporary measure, a pause, a formality. He was lying. Or perhaps he simply didn't understand what he had just done. Because in that moment, the money in your wallet stopped being backed by anything at all. Not gold, not silver, nothing. It became a promise. And promises, as history keeps proving, are the easiest thing in the world to break. This is the story of how the dollar died and was reborn as something far more dangerous. To understand what was broken, you have to understand what existed before it. Go back to July 1944. World War II is still raging in Europe and the Pacific, but 44 nations already know the war is ending, and someone has to design what comes after. They gather at a resort hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, economists, finance ministers, and one dominant idea. The world needs a system so nations never again slide into the currency chaos that helped cause the Great Depression, and arguably, the war itself. The agreement they sign is elegant, at least on paper. The US dollar is pegged to gold. $35 buys 1 ounce, fixed, guaranteed. Every other major currency is then pegged to the dollar. The pound, the franc, the mark, all of them, indirectly, backed by gold through America. For the first time in history, the entire non-communist world runs on one shared foundation. The dollar becomes as good as gold, because quite literally, it is gold. Any foreign government can walk up to the US Treasury and exchange their dollars for real, physical bullion. This is not just an economic arrangement. It's a statement of trust. America is saying, our currency is not a promise, it's a receipt. For 25 years, it works astonishingly well. Global trade explodes, Europe rebuilds, Japan transforms from ashes into an industrial power. Americans buy homes, cars, televisions, the greatest expansion of a middle class the world had ever witnessed. This is the era older generations remember when they say things used to be different, because they were. But underneath the prosperity, a problem was quietly growing, and it would eventually make the entire system impossible to sustain. Here's the flaw nobody wanted to talk about out loud. The dollar was the world's reserve currency, which meant the rest of the world needed dollars for trade, for savings, for stability. So America kept printing them and sending them abroad. But America had also promised any dollar can be redeemed for gold. Every dollar printed was, in theory, a claim on America's gold reserves. And the more dollars flowed overseas, to rebuild Europe, to fund the Vietnam War, to pay for a growing welfare state at home, the more claims existed against a gold supply that wasn't growing nearly as fast. By the late 1960s, foreign-held dollars vastly outnumbered the actual gold sitting in Fort Knox and the New York Federal Reserve Vault. On paper, America owed far more gold than it possessed. Foreign governments started to notice. France, under President Charles de Gaulle, began doing something almost unthinkable, actually showing up and demanding physical gold in exchange for their dollar reserves. Warships were reportedly used to transport French gold back from American vaults. Other nations quietly started doing the same. It was a slow-motion bank run, except the bank was the United States government, and the depositors were entire countries. Nixon's own Treasury officials ran the numbers and reached a chilling conclusion. If this continued, the United States could face a real possibility of running out of gold entirely. Not metaphorically, literally. Something had to give. August 13th, 1971, a Friday. Nixon summons his top economic advisors to Camp David in total secrecy. No leaks, no warnings, not even to America's closest allies, who would wake up on Monday to a completely different global financial system without a single phone call beforehand. Over that weekend, a small group of men make a decision that will outlive every one of them. On Sunday, August 15th, 1971, Nixon goes on live television, interrupting the immensely popular show Bonanza, a detail that, at the time, may have generated more public complaints than the actual policy itself. He announces what history now calls the Nixon shock. The United States, he says, will temporarily suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold. He frames it as protecting America from speculators. He frames it as strength. What he does not say, plainly, is this: the United States government can no longer keep its promise. The dollar and gold are being divorced, and this temporary separation would become permanent. Overnight, the entire Bretton Woods system, the framework underpinning global finance for 27 years, simply stops functioning. Currencies that were pegged to a dollar that was pegged to gold are now pegged to nothing. A dollar that is pegged to nothing. For the first time in modern history, the world's major currencies become what economists call fiat money, valuable only because governments say so and because people agree to believe them. No gold, no silver, no physical anchor at all, just trust. Nixon promised this would strengthen the economy. What actually followed was one of the most painful economic decades in American history. Freed from the discipline of gold, the money supply could now expand far more easily, and it did. Combined with an oil embargo just 2 years later, in 1973, the result was a toxic mix historians simply call stagflation, high inflation, and high unemployment occurring at the same time. Something classical economic theory said shouldn't even be possible. By the end of the 1970s, inflation in the United States would peak above 13% in a single year. Prices at the gas pump, the grocery store, everywhere, climbing faster than paychecks could keep up. For anyone who lived through it, this wasn't an abstract economic term. It was watching your savings buy noticeably less, month after month. It was interest rates on mortgages eventually climbing above 18% by the early 1980s, just to try to tame the inflation that the 1971 decision had helped unleash. The generation that remembers waiting in gas lines, watching the price of a loaf of bread creep upward year after year. They were living through the direct aftershock of that one weekend at Camp David. And here's the part that matters most for today. Since 1971, every single major currency on Earth has operated the same way, backed by nothing but government promises and the ability to print more. 50-plus years later, the system Nixon created, temporarily in his own words, is still the one we live under. And the same pressure that broke Bretton Woods hasn't gone away. It's simply grown larger. Since 1971, the US dollar has lost roughly 85% of its purchasing power. A dollar in your pocket today buys a small fraction of what it bought the day before. That broadcast interrupted Bonanza. The national debt, freed from any gold constraint, has climbed from under $500 billion in 1971 to well over $30 trillion today. Without a physical anchor, there has been no mechanical limit on how much a government can eventually borrow or print, only political and economic ones. And history shows those limits tend to get tested eventually. This is not a prediction of imminent collapse. Currencies can operate on trust for a very long time, and fiat money has enabled real global growth. But it is worth understanding clearly: the money you're saving for retirement, the money in your bank account, has not been backed by anything physical for over 5 decades. Its entire value rests on confidence in institutions, in governments, in the promise that tomorrow it will still be worth roughly what it's worth today. Nixon told the country his decision was temporary. It has now outlasted every other economic policy of the 20th century. Every financial system in history has eventually faced its reckoning. Rome debased its coinage. Weimar Germany printed itself into oblivion. And Bretton Woods quietly ended on an August evening in 1971. The question history keeps asking, generation after generation, is simple. What happens when trust in a promise runs out? If you found this story valuable, subscribe to the Financial Chronicle. We uncover the moments in financial history that quietly shape the world you live in today, and what they might mean for what comes next.